Hello, welcome back everybody to another video. Today, I wanted to talk about a little bit of something that just came out yesterday, which honestly right now is pretty big news. Now there's two specific things that I want to talk about, but we're going to start off with this one. And as you can see by the headline, Sony in talks to buy media powerhouse behind Elden Ring. That media powerhouse being Kadokawa Games. Now we've talked a little bit about Kadokawa in the past. I remember they had, mainly because they own FROMSOFTWARE. Along with FROMSOFTWARE, of course, they own a lot of different properties, a lot of different games, mainly anime games and anime properties. But of course, their most popular thing being FROMSOFTWARE's games. So this is pretty big news. In my eyes, what this looks like, to me, Sony has maybe attempted, of course, to buy FROMSOFTWARE. I don't think FROMSOFTWARE and Miyazaki and the team would allow themselves to be bought on their own. They've done a lot of deals with Sony, especially in the past. They've worked closest with Sony, sometimes making games exclusively for Sony, but I feel like they want to be an independent company. So what this looks like to me is Sony goes, all right, if we can't buy you, we'll buy the company that owns you. I mean, Sony has so much money, they can literally just do that. Now, Sony does already own shares in Kadokawa and FROMSOFTWARE, but I guess maybe they're trying to take up the rest of it. Sony focusing on entertainment such as games, movie, and anime. And that's the thing, right? It's not just, hey, we're going to have the next Elden Ring, we're going to have the next Dark Souls or whatever. We're going to have all the new properties from FROMSOFTWARE, the new IPs. I do truly think that if this happens, we are going to start seeing a lot of media, let's just say anime, TV shows, quite possibly, you know, like a movie of anything related to FROMSOFTWARE. For example, an Elden Ring TV show, a Bloodborne TV show, something like that. And we've talked a lot about this. Literally, I think a couple weeks back or a couple months back, there was rumors that a Sekiro like anime was happening, and then there was a Bloodborne HBO show that was like 6 years ago that I remember making a video on. There's always rumors about these talks about possible television shows. Now, if this goes through and happens, it's something that would be a lot more likely. But the thing is, I really don't want to see this happen, if I'm being completely honest. I would not like Sony to own FROMSOFTWARE and, you know, not directly own them, but kind of directly own them at the end of the day. But as of right now, all it is just two sources familiar with the matter said as the technology giant looks to add to its entertainment portfolio. The talks between the two sides are ongoing, and if successful, a deal could be signed in the coming weeks, the sources said. Kadokawa's shares closed up 23% at their daily limit. Its market capitalization was around 2.7 billion. Prior to Reuters' report, Sony shares closed up to 0.6. So Sony owns some shares in Kadokawa, but it's not an insane amount. They're still going to have to pay a huge amount, at least over 2.7 billion. Now, Sony has not come forth to say anything, which of course they're not going to say anything. Oh, I'm sorry, and I was mistaken, by the way. Sony actually has a 2% stake in Kadokawa, and they have a 14% stake in FROMSOFTWARE itself. So listen, what I'm saying is, I think as much as they want to have all these other properties, which are going to be great, a lot of different anime properties and stuff like that, especially with them owning Crunchyroll. Now, this has been a big point as well of criticizing Sony and what they've done with Crunchyroll. I personally have a subscription to Crunchyroll because, well, it's one of the only fucking places where you could watch anime in the US. There was competition. Crunchyroll bought it, got rid of them, and then raised up their own prices. Like, the fact that they've already started doing these type of things after a couple years, I feel like it's a very bad sign for anything that's coming in the future that is going to be owned by Sony. But with this, again, this shows me that in reality, Sony wants FROMSOFTWARE, and that's the top thing that they want, and everything else is just kind of a little bit of a bonus. 100% they would instantly, I think, want to make an Elden Ring 2. That's instantly, I think, the first thing they would want to do, being that Elden Ring sold 25 million copies, and that's probably not even updated. I'm pretty sure it's over 30 at this point. Has been one of the most praised video games to ever release. And that's the thing, right? Like, I know FROMSOFTWARE at the end of the day have control of what they can do. It almost feels like maybe Kadokawa was just kind of allowing them to do that, but Sony, I almost feel like would be more direct and be more nosy and kind of stick their hands into places where they don't belong more than quite possibly their current parent company. Now that's me speaking out of my ass, not knowing anything, but I feel like FromSoft kind of give their all, and they do their best work when you just kind of let them cook. You know, imagine how much pressure somebody like Sony would have put on them to just hurry up and put out Elden Ring. What if it came out half-baked, and then it wasn't the critically acclaimed game that we all love and know today? But that was one of the big news things that came out of this. Now, I'm actually curious to ask everybody, but what do you guys think? Would you guys want Sony to own Kadokawa, which owns FromSoftware, essentially making Sony owned FromSoftware? It's kind of how that's going to work. I think that I personally wouldn't. As much as we'd see probably more of FromSoftware in different media, for example, like a television show or a movie or an anime, because Sony has those connections, you know? The Last of Us was incredibly successful for Sony. They for sure want to branch out more into that type of media with their video games and their properties, but I don't know, man. I feel like FromSoft, you just gotta let them cook, and if they allow them to do that and don't meddle in their shit and just go, all right, here's money, do what you gotta do, make a game, take your time, then I guess it won't be so bad. But I feel like I still wouldn't want things to change. If anything, the only thing that you'd hope for if this goes through is that Sony knows how valuable FromSoftware is and would just give them even more money and more people to work on their games and more help that is actually helpful and useful to FromSoftware more than meddling in their business and kind of butting in and interrupting their flow of process to make games. That's at least my hope for it if this is something that goes through, but I guess we won't see until a few weeks from now, and of course I will keep you guys updated if that happens. And in other FromSoftware news that I really wanted to talk about, but I feel like wasn't worthy enough to make a video on its own, so I thought I might as well throw it in here as well. Currently, there is a talk, just a little buzz throughout the shadows, the outskirts, that right now there is a Dark Souls 3 remastered in development. Now, of course, this came from a leaker, so with anything like that, right, you always gotta take it with a grain of salt. This guy apparently claimed on a Xbox podcast that FromSoftware is currently having people work on Dark Souls 3 Remastered. A lot of people will probably file this under "this was obvious," he said. What I've heard is that we're getting a Dark Souls 3 Remastered, which no, I would definitely not say that this was obvious. Like, I would not have expected Dark Souls 3 to be the one to get like a remaster, even though Dark Souls 1 got a remaster, right? And I really want to talk about this, but I feel like it doesn't need it, right? Dark Souls 2 got a remaster as well, basically with Scholarly First Sin. You can kind of consider it a remaster. And then Dark Souls 3 is kind of left in the dust because it's the newest one. But that's the thing, it's the newest one. I feel like I don't know what they're gonna do. They're obviously not gonna update Dark Souls 3 to be on the Elden Ring engine. It's not going to look like Elden Ring, completely shiny and brand new. The game's already a pretty damn steady 60 FPS. The game still looks good. Obviously, it's not up to date with like I said, Elden Ring or something like that with its modern graphics, considering it was released something like 8 or 9 years ago. But I for sure don't really think it needs it. I don't exactly know what they're going to do. Will they give it the Dark Souls 1 treatment where in Dark Souls 1, that remaster was way more necessary, but at the end of the day, they made it 60 FPS, steady 60 mostly, some updated textures, some of the leaves on the wall move now, ooh. And then they got rid of the original Prepare to Die edition, and now it's cost like $400 to buy it. Is that the treatment they're going for with Dark Souls 3? Obviously not the whole getting rid of it part, but let's continue on here. Baker hinted that he had more information on the remaster but wasn't allowed to pass that on. One aspect was regarding resolution and frame rate that Nick believes will be more than the 1080p 60 FPS that the original game features. Now again, in my opinion, FromSoft games, it doesn't matter if you have over 60 FPS. It really doesn't. But that's about it. That was all the leak for this. I'm not going to say that I don't think this is happening, but I would say it's more likely than not that it's not something that's actually gonna happen. Of course, there is a certain crowd that will be extremely pissed to know that Dark Souls 3 is getting a remaster while a certain other game is not getting touched. I think that's instantly gonna piss some people off. But listen, am I gonna complain about a new Dark Souls 3 remaster when it comes out? If it comes out? Hell no, I'm gonna play the shit out of it. Imagine bringing all of the new players from Elden Ring onto Dark Souls 3 and then having them try PvP and invading them and revitalizing the PvP community again, and it won't just be Gang City tryhards for about a month and then it'll die out again and it'll probably be all Gang City tryhards. But listen, I would personally love this. Dark Souls 3 is my favorite of the Souls games. One of my favorite FROMSOFTWARE games, probably right behind Elden Ring. If this happens, I ain't gonna complain. Do I think it needs it? No, I really don't think Dark Souls 3 needs a 4K resolution, 120 FPS remaster. Unless you're gonna give me a remake where you pop it on the Elden Ring engine and everything is new textures for everything that are high quality, then I don't know, it feels like a cash grab to me, if I'm being completely honest. I'll for sure play it if it happens. I'll be very excited for it. I love Dark Souls 3. It was started off this whole YouTube journey for me, so I don't know. Let me know your guys' opinion on both of these things. I'd love to hear if you guys think a Dark Souls 3 remaster should be in the works. Again, I 100% think something like Bloodborne deserves more of a remaster, even though I think Bloodborne, let me tell you guys right now, I think Bloodborne has something going on, and I think that's gonna be revealed here within the next year or two. I 100% think there's a remaster going, or maybe even a full-on remake of Bloodborne. I don't know if it's gonna be for the PlayStation 5 Pro, I don't know if it's gonna be for PlayStation 6, but I think there's something being done with that, and that's why they're so quiet. I'm gonna be the optimistic one, right? A lot of people shit talk Sony, being like, oh, they love losing money. At the end of the day, guys, they're a freaking company, right? They'll make more money selling TVs in a month and radios and every electronic that Bloodborne would probably make in a week. But that's it. Let me know your guys' thoughts and opinions in the comment section down below. I'm very curious to see what's gonna go down within the next, month or two with all this FROMSOFTWARE talk. It's crazy. It's crazy stuff. But I appreciate you guys watching. If you made it this far, maybe consider dropping a like. Always helps out the channel. Thank you so much if you do so. And I'll see you all in the next one. Bye-bye, everybody.